Hello and welcome to Pixel Chatter, the show where we talk tech with the people who make it happen. I'm your visual virtuoso, Justin Lachovsky. Some of you may know me from the Render Impact team, where we create all sorts of beautiful 3D content and digital art for any display canvas. With us today is Brandy Alvarado Miranda from BAM Marketing and PR. Brandy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you. It's a pleasure. Obviously, you and I know each other really, really well, but I figured this is a great opportunity to tell the rest of the world about all the wonderful things that you do. And obviously, you've been in the Pro AV industry for a while. You
Yep.
made some waves with AVIXA on the Women's Council side, and now you're championing forward the Wave It platform. So I'd love to just hear more about you and what it is that you do. Tell us more about you.
Oh my gosh, where do I start? So, I guess we'll start with BAM. So, BAM marketing is about 4 years old, and I started probably the stupidest thing I ever did during the pandemic, which was start a business. And I totally blame one of my mentors, Hal Truax, for doing that. I like many people, got laid off during the pandemic pretty early on, and like all good people in the AV industry, I put my open to work up on LinkedIn. And I thought, well, I'll just, find my next big career move something in AV. I wanted to stick in the industry and obviously something director of sales and marketing ish kind of thing. So that's what I've always done. And I put up my open to work and I started getting like little tidbits. People saying, well, can you write this blog for me? Can you help me update my website? I need help with social. I need this. And, all these little mini marketing freelance projects. And I thought, well, this is fine. I'll just do this kind of stuff until, I land my next big career move. And it just kind of snowballed. I started doing things for a couple of different companies regularly, and then a few more companies, and then they told two friends, and then they told two friends, kind of a thing. And soon it was like, more than 40 hours a week. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This is kind of a little business. And I started talking to Hal, and he's like, you need to start a company. And I was like, no, 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 no. I never wanted to do that in a million years. Never thought about owning my own company. Never wanted to be in business for myself. I was always going to work for the man, so to speak.
Mhm. Yep.
But that sort of changed. And then, as we were discussing it, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to start BAM for now until I find my next thing. I kept thinking, well, I'm going to find my next thing, my next big career move, right? But until then, because there's this pandemic thing going on, I got to, kind of keep the lights on, right? So I started BAM with his encouragement,
Mhm.
and I blame him now fully for this 4 years later in the best way. But now I really can't see myself doing anything else because I love it. I love having a lovely little family, as I call it. My ecosystem of clients. All my clients are in Pro AV and or digital signage or in sort of residential AV, but in this community, in this industry, and I can't see myself doing anything else at this point. So that next big career jump, this is it. So
I would
and
love to
then
hear it. I mean, it's such a great
yeah,
story. I mean, you've come such a long way, especially with the business in the last several years. And we've
yeah.
had the privilege of working together in the past, and I can express wholeheartedly that you are plugged in and super helpful.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
great. I do really love that, and I know that starting a business obviously comes with a handful of challenges. And
oh yeah.
Pro AV is such a niche industry, even though it's massive now, at least compared to what it was several years ago. But
Uh-huh.
maybe you can just highlight some of what your biggest challenges were in carving
Oh
out
yeah.
your services for such a niche industry.
Yeah, well, early on it was I'm a one man band, so my bandwidth was, like pulled every which way. Um, you know, During that time too, because it was the pandemic, I was having to juggle working from home, homeschooling and all that stuff. And also, just the pandemic, heightened everything to a degree that was crazy. So, juggling and just really kind of finding that there's no true work-life balance. I think that that's kind of a fallacy. It's a goal, but it's a real tough thing to kind of crack. So, I think that was probably my biggest struggle is just trying to to do it all and be it all. And now, fast forward 4 years, I've got a staff now, and I've, that's always a challenge, like who to hire, who do you trust with your clients, who do you trust with your family, right? Like, because I really do think of my clients that way. And Justin, that because of our working relationship, I really feel like I become an extension of your team. And
100%.
I really, I know you guys really, I don't want to say intimately, but I know the company very, very well, to the fact that even some of my clients, when I write things for them, they often say, boy, this sounds just like me. I know you that well. I know your cadence. I know how you speak. I know what words you tend to use. And so when I write, whether it be a blog or press release or what have you, I really do know my clients well enough to make it sound like it's coming from them, as any good market really should. But, the other thing that I've always been challenged with is just, staying above, like staying active in the community and staying, on the up and up on the trends, right? And that's a big thing too, because AV and this industry is ever evolving by the minute rapidly, So for me, it's been being plugged into events, into different groups on like LinkedIn and things like that, and other, ways that we can continually educate ourselves. And I think that's another thing that I would pass along, as a mentor to my mentees. You don't ever stop being educated, especially in this industry. And actually, I would say that applies to most industries, to be honest, that you should always continue learning. It's kind of a joke around our house. We finished college. Now what? Continue to learn, continue educating yourself, because that never stops. It's a joke if you think that you get out of college and or school and just think that you're done. You're never done.
Yeah, they don't do a really great job of communicating that to you when you're younger.
Well.
I was in a similar boat. I was excited to get out of school and jump into the job market, and that
Right.
education path just never stops. So if I can pass any knowledge on to the youngins out there, the up and comers in just in general in the pro AV space, never stop learning, never stop getting involved in everything imaginable. And you mentioned a really important thing. It's key trends, and that the fact that the pro AV market is always evolving. So we'll jump into trends in a couple minutes, but before we go there, I wanted to take a little bit of a step back. And I think you have a very interesting story. We talked a lot about BAM and how it came to be. But let's take a step back even further and just, maybe you can highlight, how you got started in the pro AV space, and, any defining, career moments that, just help shape where you are today.
Sure. So I've been in AV since 2014, so 11 years now. I still feel like I'm an AV baby, as I always say. I think because I always feel like it's something new, right? And that's part of the reason why I guess I feel that way. But I was a director of marketing and sales for an insurance agency, actually, before I started the AV. Totally different worlds, very conservative, kind of banking, suit and tie kind of place. And then I flipped the switch and got into AV. Honestly, kind of by being stalked. I had revamped the company that I was working for. I had rebooted their website, their brand, their identity. And, it was quite a lengthy process of doing all those things. And so I had a really, and I've done that a couple of times actually in my career prior to getting into AV. That's kind of where I do, what I work on a lot with BAM right now is working on brand identities and recognition and building brands. But because I had that expertise, there was somebody in the AV industry that was looking to essentially do the same thing, kind of a brand reboot. And so they contacted me on LinkedIn and said, would you be willing to work, for our company? And I said, yeah, I'd like to take a look at what you have to offer. And then it kind of went dead silent for a little while. And I never heard back from that person. And then fast forward a couple months later, they hit me up again. And at that time, the insurance company that I was working for was going through a merger acquisition. And it was, kind of a little bit of a volatile situation. And I was really ready to jump ship at that point. And so this gentleman from the AV industry said, I'm really ready to hire you now. Can you, let's have an interview. And I loved it. I knew nothing about AV, zero. I probably went in thinking, AV was like the high school kids that I remember pushing, AV carts around campus and stuff like that. I had no clue what I was getting into, quite honestly. And I got plunked into AV about 2 weeks before InfoComm too. So that was another thing that I had to contend with.
Wow, trial by
And
fire.
I would literally throw you in the deep end and sink or swim. Let's tread water if you can, and see what you can do. So I immediately really, I had no clue. So I had to really bone up pretty fast. And I got plunked into the booth at InfoComm and looking around going, wow, this is really not what I expected at all. It was amazing. The technology, all the bright, shiny ooh-ah displays and all that kind of stuff, and I fell in love with the people in the community because everybody was so inviting, so inclusive. It was really come as you are. I mean, there were people with tattoos and, mohawks and crazy hair and purple hair and whatever. It was just very open and inviting. And I guess coming from a very buttoned up conservative world into that was really refreshing. And actually I felt I kind of felt I found my home, my people, So I stuck with it, obviously. I stayed at that company for about 5 years and I accomplished what I set out to do, which was rebrand them, get a new website built, and then also build processes, really, because there was a real disconnect between sales and marketing, as it is in a lot of companies, actually. So we created a lot of processes that could then equate, hey, we're spending these marketing dollars and it's equating to these sales, in our funnel and that sort of thing. So 5 years later, after I was with that company, I thought, well, I'm kind of ready for something else. I did my mission and I was ready to explore some more opportunities. And I went to work for an integration firm, and that integration firm was only working in the attractions industry, themed entertainment, as well as museums mostly.
Okay.
But that proved to be kind of a crazy thing because then the pandemic hit. And, the writing's on the wall. You're not doing anything with the attraction world, nor are you doing anything in museums. That is all closed down for the foreseeable future, So, and like I said, then I got laid off and then started BAM thereafter. But, kind of the crazy part in those first 5 years, I met an amazing person, Corey Schaefer, who I refer to a lot of time as my main mentor. And she really got me acclimated into AV very, very quickly. Within the first year, I met her and we hit it off. It was just a real interesting relationship from the get-go. She was very much a powerful woman in the industry, and I loved that about her. And she just took no crap from anybody, basically. And her enthusiasm is just contagious, is amazing and contagious, and her work ethic is just amazing. She's now retired from the industry, but we keep in contact. But part of the other part of me, I guess I would say, in this industry is the passionate person about bringing women into the industry and making for more equitable futures for women in the industry. So going back to Corey Schaefer, she and I had gone to an InfoComm. And we got back and we'd gone to the Women's Council breakfast, the AVIXA Women's Council breakfast. And she's like, doesn't it suck that this is only once a year, that these breakfasts are only once a year? She goes, I hate it. She goes, it's such a high. We have all these really great conversations. We have this amazing community of women who love, to get together and it's just such an inspirational, motivational moment. And then we leave the show and then it just nothing. And I said, yeah, it does. It really kind of sucks because that was such a high. It was just amazing being around, other like-minded women in the industry. And she's like, we should do something of a networking event here in Southern California. Would you be willing to help me? And I thought, sure, why not? I do events, I do marketing, I can handle that. So we started this little, Southern California Women of InfoComm. It was called WIN at first. And then it morphed into AVIXA Women's Council when they rebranded. And so we started the first Southern California chapter, and it took off like gangbusters. And it was crazy because she and I never talked to AVIXA about doing it. We just we plotted our course, and we didn't get permission, which was kind of maybe a no-no at the time, but we went ahead and did it anyways. But it was such a success that other areas of the country wanted to adopt sort of the same model. And it quickly grew to what is now like the AVIXA Women's Council and the local groups around the world. So I became the Women's Council chair in 2019, and I served 3 years with the AVIXA Women's Council, and we grew that to 50 groups worldwide, which was just phenomenal. And we grew our membership to the councils by an enormous amount. And then I handed off the baton, and then I thought to myself, well, I haven't really made a dent as much as I thought I wanted to. I haven't moved the needle. That was my whole goal when I started, becoming the chair, was that I wanted to move the needle to bring more women into the industry and grow our numbers. The pandemic kind of really took our feet out from underneath us, unfortunately.
Definitely.
So a group of myself and a couple of other women during the pandemic, we were having like one of these Zoom cocktail hours, and we got to chatting, and sort of the same chat that I had with Corey. Doesn't it suck that we're no longer really doing much with the AVIXA Women's Council? And the consensus was, yeah, this really kind of sucks. And we didn't get all of our goals met in terms of what we as women wanted to do with the council. So we started Wave It, Women in AV and IT. And it's a nonprofit that we've been doing for a handful of years now. And it's fun because now I do get to fulfill part of my mission and keep it going for others now in the industry, which is really kind of cool. So, mentoring's huge. We have a mentoring program. Interning is huge. We have an intern program. Finding the right job is huge. We have a job board and other things. So, Wave It's really become very much a passion project for me to continue to elevate women and enhance our career growth in the industry.
I absolutely love to hear it. And obviously, you've kept me along for the ride as you've evolved Wave It. And I try and participate as much as I can, even as a man, just helping to amplify those voices. And, that's truly what we're trying to do here as part of the Pixel Chatter platform and show is, there's so many discussions and podcasts out there about the industry and the things that are, evolving trends and stuff like that. But not enough of these podcasts actually capture the people behind the tech. And I think because we are such a relationship-based business, it's really an important topic to explore the individuals and the humans behind all of these great, technologies and projects. And part of that is, giving women another opportunity to amplify their voice and get more involved and really, reach equitable opportunities within the industry. So we've obviously spoken about that. I'm glad to have you on the show with us today, but it is a series that we do want to keep on evolving and include as many women as possible. So for the listeners out there, we will have a series that's geared towards specifically having more of a female presence on these shows. So thank you, Brandy, for being an advocate and keeping me along for the ride. Let's keep this ship going.
Keep it going. I love that about you too. You've always been somebody who I know has been a really true champion and ally for women. And that's really, it's funny because one of the things that always happens with, when we're out in the public or doing an event or something like that, men always say, oh, well, this is only for women. And they, they kind of back up and look a little scared. It's not. It's actually for everybody. All are welcome. We always say that. And we really mean that. We do need men like yourself and others to be bold champions for women in the workplace. And what you're doing is, and bringing women into the fold, into your Pixel Chatter conversations is huge because we often find ourselves in a position where we're diminished, in the boardroom, or we are, sort of like put baby in the corner kind of a thing, or, we're brought into situations where maybe we are the DEI hire, right? Or something like that. And that's the thing that we need to kind of, to work on as an industry. It's something that, needs to happen for a number of reasons. We know that bringing women into the fold brings a different perspective. We know that bringing women into an industry brings, different points of knowledge as well, because, I don't want to say we're cut from a different cloth. That's definitely not the case, but I think we have a unique style and a different thing that we bring to the table, a secret sauce, right? And let's face it, I mean, I think we have to push forward and I guess, bring more women. And part of that is outreach. Part of that is reaching women at a younger age,
Mhm.
to get involved, see how cool AV and IT can really be. And that's a big bold vision for Wave It as well, is to be more of an outreach kind of community so that we can get into, tech colleges and maybe
Mhm.
even younger than that, and bring more women into the fold.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's an excellent vision to have. And, anything that we can do to help push that forward, we're on board here at both Pixel Chatter and Render Impact. And, let's talk about how to get, people and women excited about the industry. Like you said earlier, there's so much evolution to what we do.
Oh,
LED has become massive in the last few years. I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, LED, there was tons of installations, but LCD was still the champion, display technology. So much has changed now. So for
going
the
on.
listeners out there, from your perspective, Brandy, what are you seeing as some of the bigger, tech trends, and how are you staying on the pulse of that?
I don't know how anybody stays really on the pulse of everything, but it's tough because it's rapid growth, right? Rapid evolution. I look to folks in the industry, so different publishers and magazines and digital online things. So love 16:9. I love Dave Haynes. I love all the information that he brings forth. His digital signage guide and display guide that he does every year. Even though it's hundreds of pages, thank you, Dave, for hundreds of pages of information, but it's something that I pore over because he's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the industry. So folks like him and others are really great at keeping us informed and keeping us on the forefront of what's new. I am a voracious reader of everything that's out there, not only for my own personal education, but it's a way that I can also help my clients differentiate themselves or pitch themselves in a different way, or hey, our competition's doing this, we should look into what they're doing as well, to keep up on the pulse. But I mean, to really, it's tough staying informed. I guess that's the big thing. And also participating in LinkedIn groups. There's a lot of really, really great groups out there that are highly informative. Going to different events. We were just at the Sony Roadshow down in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, and I think that was amazing. Being able to get hands on with technology anytime you can do that, invaluable, right? Seeing those shootouts between LED, LCD, and everything else that's out there, I kind of geek out on that kind of stuff too.
I hear you. And it was beautiful in San Diego. I was definitely happy to be down there, and the events were,
Yeah.
excellent. Now, one of the things
From
that
the
I think has always been a challenge, continues to be a challenge, and is one that I embrace on a daily basis. Now, content is king. Everybody knows that. Everybody says that. So, why are there still so many challenges around embracing content first as the sort of way to define a given project in the AV space?
Yeah.
And, I'm not talking about control rooms or things like that, but I'm talking about your traditional digital signage or any sort of experiential content. Um, Oftentimes, and this has just been our experience, we'll hear from integrators, we'll hear from clients, yeah, content's king, content's king. So you procured all this technology and didn't think about what your visual display was going to look like. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we got to figure out what we're going to do there. So, at these
Yeah.
trade shows and events, we see all of the, hardware manufacturers, the display folks, the media player folks, and a lot of CMS companies. So from your perspective, why aren't we seeing more content folks there? And how can we as an industry, help amplify that as really being the crux of all of these projects?
Yeah. It's funny. You and I have had this conversation before about why is content always an afterthought, right? People, end users especially, I think for a while, maybe not so much now, but for a while, they thought that, they were going to turn on their displays and it was magically going to display something.
Yeah.
Not the case. Not the case. Sorry for my friend, but it's going to play whatever logo potentially is
Yeah.
the brand of that display, but that's about all you're going to get out of that thing. So content is always an afterthought, kind of an oh shit moment, right? Like
For sure.
now what do we do? And really, and again, to our point, we've talked about this because of our relationship. Content actually needs to be a strategy and thought of well before you even really even consider displays sometimes.
Is it?
It's good to have a vision as to, I want LCD, I want LED, I want this type of directed view LED and all those sort of things. But really, how are you going to bring about any sort of goals, for your project? Now, with traditional digital signage, depending on where it's going, what are the goals? Are you trying to sell advertising? Are you trying to give some sort of messaging? Are you, is it just going to be pretty aesthetic, kind of beautiful content that you want to invigorate a room or immersify people into some sort of experience? Do you want them to interact with it? Do you want them to do something with that content? Do you want them to have some sort of game, or what have you, or learn something, whatever that is? And, I think working for somebody that, as an integration on the integration side, in museums and theme parks, that was always the thing. What is the experience that we're trying to accomplish here, right? What are the goals of this experience? And a lot of times in museums, it's, we want people to interact with this content. We want them to learn something. The educational side, the engagement side of signage and those sort of things. But really, we, other industries haven't really given that much thought as to, the strategy involved in the content. And so I think you really have to work on, I think companies like Render Impact and others that do content, you've got a couple of different pronged approach, right? You should try to work with consultants because they get specified in way, they specify in people way into a project, right?
Okay.
So that the content becomes part of the package, if that makes sense to some degree, and also part of the concept and the reality that, then kind of comes about. But I also think that working with other display manufacturers, the LED in your case, is really the way to partner up because they get into those situations early on with end users and can really help push the content, for these experiences that are being created.
I agree. And I think a lot of it has to do with education as well. And obviously, from our time working together, educating the industry on all things content has been a big goal of mine and continues to be so. And, the best example I like to give folks when they're, not necessarily thinking about content as the sort of kickoff to any of these projects, it's, when you go to watch a movie or something at the end of your day or on the weekend, you're thinking about what is it that I want to watch? Am I thinking about action? Am I thinking comedy? You're sort of setting an intention or you're figuring out the goal or the objective of what it is that you're looking to watch. Now, if you're watching a cartoon, maybe you don't need a surround sound system. Maybe you don't need a 75-inch TV. But if you're watching like a deep action movie, maybe you want a big immersive experience. So, that same approach, I think, lends itself to the commercial industry. And that's, before you decide what display technology or what CMS platform or any other these technologies that you're going to integrate, what's the objective that you're trying to solve here? And then
Absolutely.
I think that's the crux of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head as always. I think that that's a great analogy. And you're right. Like I said earlier, I don't know that you even need to figure out display technology until you have figured out what kind of content, what type of messaging. And then you think about, does it need to have audio? Does it need to have, a certain type of display? And then also then getting into, the viewing angles and those sort of things. Like, where is this going to be viewed from? Are we far away? Are we close up to it? That plays a big factor as well in terms of, a lot of different aspects of the project. But yeah, I think it has to become more of a forethought than an afterthought. And I've always thought that. And it's a hard thing because people, again, I think we're conditioned that when we turn it on, like our TVs, something's going to be there.
Yeah.
Well, that something isn't really what your end users and your clients and your patrons are wanting to see necessarily, right? It's a brand placeholder.
Totally. Absolutely. Look, Brandy, we're getting to the end of our time here. So I got just one last question before we go. What's a piece of what's that one piece of advice that you would give someone starting out in ProAV, especially women or any other underrepresented groups?
Yeah. Join organizations like WAVE, AVIXA Women's Council, and other groups like that are affiliated with, the sector of the industry that you're involved with. I think those groups bring a tremendous amount of community. They bring a tremendous amount of support, resources, and it's a great way to get in with, with and get connected. That's the other thing. I think, and Justin knows this really well. You know this really, really well about me. But I would say one of my superpowers is my ability to connect people, and I love doing that. So for me, when somebody new comes into the industry, I love to take people around and just introduce them to others, get them into the fold. So seek out industry folks like myself too that are connectors and that will help you build a network rapidly.
Great advice, Brandy. Thank you again. And just before we go, where can listeners find out more about you and BAM Marketing and PR?
Sure. So for me, I'm on everything social as AV Brandy. And then also for BAM, it's bammarketingpr.com. And then Wave It is womeninavit.org. So you can find us all over the socials for both BAM, Wave It, and myself.
Love it. Brandy, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to all you listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Pixel Chatter. Again, I'm your host, Justin Lachovsky, with the Render Impact team, your digital experience content specialist. Stay tuned for some new and exciting episodes that we have on the horizon with some really awesome guests. This Chatterbox signing off. See you next time.